never thought helping someone could make my life so complicated. My name is Ryan, and I'm 25 years old. I work at a warehouse during the day and study marketing at night. My apartment is small. The fridge barely has anything except some bread and orange juice. But I like my life. It's simple and quiet, and I don't need much to be happy. Every morning before work, I go jogging around the neighborhood. The streets are old. The mailboxes are rusty. Some houses have paint peeling off the walls. But the air feels good, and running helps me think clearly. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I put on my sneakers, stretched a little, and headed out the door. The sun was just coming up, and the street was empty except for a few birds hopping on the sidewalk. About 10 minutes into my run, I saw someone ahead of me. A woman. She was running fast like she had somewhere important to be. I didn't recognize her at first, but as I got closer, I realized it was Sarah. She lives in the corner house, the one with the white fence and the flower pots on the porch. I'd seen her a few times before, usually walking her cat in the evenings or carrying groceries. She always looked calm and graceful, like she didn't quite belong on this street. But somehow she fit in perfectly. I didn't know she was a runner. She moved with rhythm, her steps steady and strong. For some reason, I started running faster to catch up with her. Maybe I wanted to say hello. Maybe I just wanted to see if I could keep up. When I got close enough, she glanced at me. There was a spark in her eyes, like she noticed I was trying to match her pace. It made me push harder. Then it happened. Her foot hit a rock, a small jagged one lying in the middle of the path. She stumbled forward, her arms reaching out to catch herself, but she couldn't stop the fall. She landed on the ground hard, her ankle twisting under her. I heard her gasp. I stopped running immediately and rushed over. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what to do. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice louder than I meant it to be. She didn't answer right away. She just sat there, breathing hard, holding her ankle with both hands. Her face was tight with pain. I bent down next to her. "Let me help you up." But she didn't move. Instead, she looked at me, her blue eyes staring right into mine, and she whispered something I'll never forget. "Because of you." I froze. "What? What do you mean?" My heart was beating fast. I didn't understand. Did she mean I caused her to fall? Was she angry at me? She closed her eyes for a second, like she regretted saying it. Then she shook her head and looked away. I helped her stand up slowly. She winced when she put weight on her ankle. "There's a bench over there," I said, pointing to a wooden bench near the trees. "Let's sit for a minute." She nodded but didn't say anything. We walked over together, her arm leaning on my shoulder. She was heavier than I expected, but I didn't mind. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. We sat down. The bench was old and creaky. She rubbed her ankle gently, her face still tight. I wanted to ask her again what she meant by those words, but her expression told me not to push. So instead, I started talking. I don't even know why. Maybe I was nervous. Maybe I just wanted to fill the silence. "I moved here about 2 years ago," I said. "I didn't know anyone at first. It was hard, but I got used to it. The neighborhood's not perfect, but it's home now." She listened, really listened. Her blue eyes stayed on me the whole time, like what I was saying actually mattered. Felt strange. Most people don't listen that way. After a few minutes, she finally spoke. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something heavy. "I should get home." I nodded. "Let me walk with you. You can't walk on that ankle alone." She hesitated, like she wanted to say no, but then she nodded. The walk back to her house was quiet. She limped a little, leaning on me every few steps. I could feel the weight of her trust in that simple gesture. It made me feel protective, like I needed to make sure she got home safely. When we reached her porch, she stopped and turned to me. "You should be more careful," she said with a faint smile, like she was teasing me. I laughed nervously, not sure what to say. She pulled out her phone and unlocked her front door. I thought that was it. I thought I'd just go home and forget about the whole thing. But then I heard her whisper into the phone. Her back was to me, so I couldn't see her face. but I heard the words clearly. He doesn't suspect anything yet. I stood there frozen. Who was she talking to? What didn't I suspect? My mind started racing. I wanted to ask her, but something told me not to. She stepped inside and closed the door without looking back. I stood on her porch for a few more seconds, trying to make sense of what just happened. I walked back to my apartment slowly. The whole way, her words kept repeating in my head. Because of you. And then, he doesn't suspect anything yet. What did it mean? Was I part of something I didn't understand? The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. That simple morning jog had just pulled me into something I couldn't walk away from. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah sitting on that bench, whispering into her phone. I kept wondering what she meant. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I had to see her again. I had to know what was going on. I waited until I saw her on her porch. She was sitting in a chair, her ankle wrapped in a bandage, holding a cup of coffee. When she saw me walking across the street, she looked surprised. "You again?" she said, but her voice wasn't cold. It was soft, almost welcoming. I smiled awkwardly. "I just wanted to check on your ankle. Make sure you're okay." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Come in. It's too cold out here." Her house smelled like vanilla and coffee. The living room was warm and cozy, filled with bookshelves and framed pictures on the walls. I noticed them right away. One photo showed a younger Sarah standing next to a man in a suit. He looked serious, almost distant. Another photo was from a wedding. Sarah was smiling, but the man beside her wasn't. There was a picture of her cat too, curled up on a blanket. But there were no recent photos. No pictures of friends or family. Felt like she'd stopped taking photos a long time ago. We sat at her kitchen table. I started talking about work and school, just filling the silence. She listened the same way she had before. Her eyes focused on me like I was the only person in the world. Felt good. Felt safe. Then she leaned back in her chair and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "You remind me of someone I used to know," she said quietly. Her tone was soft, almost sad. Before I could ask who, the front door opened. A man walked in. He was tall and older, maybe in his mid-40s. His shirt was pressed perfectly, like he'd just come from an important meeting. His eyes landed on me immediately, and they weren't friendly. "Who's this?" he asked sharply. Sarah tensed up. I could see it in the way her shoulders stiffened. "A neighbor," she answered quickly. "He helped me yesterday when I hurt my ankle." The man looked at me the way a wolf looks at something it wants to chase away. "You don't need kids hanging around here," he said. His voice was cold and dismissive. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to smile. I didn't want to cause trouble. "I should go," I said, standing up. Sarah tried to say something, but the man cut her off. "Yeah, that's a good idea." As I walked to the door, I heard him mutter under his breath, "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" I didn't know if he was talking to Sarah or to me, but the words stuck with me. The rest of that week felt strange. I kept seeing Sarah around the neighborhood. She walked slower now because of her ankle. I noticed her phone buzzing a lot. Every time she looked at it, her face changed. Sometimes she seemed worried. Other times she seemed angry. A few times, she looked at me with warmth, like she was happy to see me. But then she'd pull back, putting up walls I couldn't understand. I told my friend Jake about her. Jake is the kind of guy who laughs too loud and always has an opinion about everything. When I mentioned Sarah, he grinned. "So you've got a thing for the older neighbor. Classic. You should invite her over for dinner. Women like that don't want small talk. They want to feel alive again." He made it sound so simple. But nothing about Sarah felt simple. One evening, I decided to take Jake's advice. I went to the grocery store and bought pasta, sauce, garlic bread, and a bottle of sparkling water. When I knocked on Sarah's door, she looked surprised. I held up the bag and smiled. "Dinner?" I asked, my voice shaking a little. She hesitated, then stepped aside to let me in. We cooked together. She told me I was doing everything wrong, but she was smiling when she said it. I burned the garlic bread, and she laughed at me. I teased her for being bossy about the recipe. For a while, it felt normal. It felt like we were just two people who'd known each other for years. But underneath it all, I could sense something pulling her back, something she wasn't ready to share. After we finished eating, I started clearing the table. That's when Sarah grew quiet. Her hand rested on a glass, and her eyes stared at nothing. "You shouldn't get too close," she whispered. I stopped moving. She looked at me, and I saw conflict in her eyes. Part of her wanted me there. Part of her wanted me gone. Before I could say anything, her phone lit up on the counter. The name on the screen said David. She grabbed it quickly and walked into the other room. Through the half-open door, I heard her voice. It was firm but shaking. "Stop calling me. You don't get to control me anymore." My heart started racing. I stood there in her kitchen, trying to piece it all together. That man from before, the one who'd looked at me like I didn't belong. His name was David. He wasn't just some stranger. He was her past. And from the sound of it, he wasn't letting go. When Sarah came back, she forced a smile like nothing had happened. But I could still hear her words echoing in my head. "You shouldn't get too close." The problem was, I already was. I told myself I'd keep my distance, but I couldn't. Every time I saw Sarah watering her flowers or sitting on her porch, something pulled me toward her. A few days after our dinner, I noticed her struggling to carry a heavy bag of soil from her car. Her ankle was still healing, and she was limping badly. I jogged over without thinking. "Let me get that," I said, reaching for the bag. She looked relieved but also worried. "Ryan, you don't have to keep doing this." But I already had the bag in my hands, carrying it to her garden. That became our pattern. I'd bring her mail when I saw it piling up. I fixed the latch on her gate when it started sticking. One afternoon, her cat got out, and I spent an hour helping her search the neighborhood until we found him hiding under a car 3 houses down. Each time, Sarah thanked me quietly, but I could see the concern growing in her eyes. She knew what I didn't want to admit. People were watching. Mrs. Chun from next door stopped me one morning as I was leaving Sarah's house. "You spend a lot of time over there," she said, her voice sweet but her eyes sharp. I shrugged and kept walking, but I felt her stare burning into my back. At the corner store, I saw 2 women whispering and glancing at me. When I walked past them, they went silent. The whispers were spreading like fire, and there was nothing I could do to stop them. Jake noticed I was distracted at work. During our lunch break, he sat across from me with a sandwich and a knowing look. "People are talking, aren't they?" he asked. I nodded. He chewed thoughtfully for a moment. "So what? Let them talk. If she's worth it, you'll survive a little gossip. But if you're not ready for that, then maybe you need to figure out what you really want." His words stuck with me for the rest of the day. That evening, I found Sarah sitting on her porch steps, staring at the sky. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and pink. She looked restless, her phone sitting next to her like a bomb waiting to go off. I sat down beside her without asking. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, she said, "I used to think the hardest thing in life was losing someone, but sometimes it's harder letting someone new in." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just told her the truth. "You don't have to do it all at once. You don't even have to let me in completely. Just don't shut me out." Her eyes got shiny, like she might cry, and then she did something that surprised me. She reached over and took my hand. It was just for a second, but it felt like everything. Then headlights cut across the street. A car pulled up fast and stopped right in front of her house. David stepped out, his face tight with anger. He walked straight toward us, his footsteps heavy on the pavement. "So it's true," he said, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. "You've got some boy hanging around now." I stood up quickly. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "I'm not." But Sarah stopped me, her voice firm. "David, leave." He ignored her completely. His eyes stayed locked on me. "You think this is a game? You think she needs someone like you? She doesn't need a kid chasing fairy tales. She needs someone who knows how the world works." Every word felt like a punch to the stomach. I wanted to shout back, to tell him he was wrong, but the look in Sarah's eyes stopped me. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for me. Finally, she raised her voice louder than I'd ever heard it. Enough. You don't get to decide who I see. David's jaw clenched. He glared at me one last time, his eyes full of warning. Then he muttered something under his breath and walked back to his car. The engine roared to life, and he drove off into the night. Silence hung between us like smoke. Sarah was trembling. I could see it in her hands, in the way she wrapped her arms around herself. She turned to me, and her voice broke. You see now why I said you shouldn't get close? He won't let this go. He never does. I wanted to tell her I didn't care, that I was ready to face whatever came. But she looked so small in that moment, so tired, that I just sat back down beside her. She leaned against me, and I put my arm around her shoulders. We stayed like that for a long time, neither of us speaking. Then, in the dim porch light, she whispered something I'll never forget. I thought my heart was done. I thought I couldn't feel this again. But you... She stopped, like the words frightened her. I held my breath, waiting, but she just shook her head and smiled sadly. You should go home. I didn't want to leave, but I could see she needed space. I stood up slowly and walked back across the street. The whole way, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. David's threats, the neighbors' whispers, Sarah's fear. But none of it was strong enough to erase the memory of her hand in mine, or the way her voice had cracked when she almost told me how she felt. Because in that moment, I knew this wasn't one-sided. Whatever was happening between us, it was real. The next few days were harder than I expected. The gossip got louder. At the grocery store, I saw two older women staring at Sarah and me while we stood in line. Their voices dropped to whispers when Sarah reached for a carton of milk, but I could still hear the judgment in their tone. At work, Jake started asking more serious questions. Man, you're playing with fire. People are talking. Your parents are going to hear about this. Your professors might hear. Are you really ready for all that? I laughed it off at the time, but that night my phone buzzed. It was my mom. She never called this late. When I answered, her voice was calm but worried. Ryan, honey, people are saying things about you and that woman across the street. She's older. She's been through a lot. Are you sure this is what you want? Her words hurt because they echoed the doubts I'd been trying to ignore. But when I looked out my window and saw Sarah closing her curtains, moving slowly like the weight of the world was on her shoulders, I knew the answer. Yes, I wanted this, no matter how complicated it was. The next evening, I crossed the street with my mind made up. Sarah was sitting in her living room with a book open in her lap, but she wasn't reading it. Her eyes were distant, lost in thought. When I knocked, she looked up, surprised. I didn't wait for an invitation. I just walked in and sat down across from her. People are talking, I said. My mom called. My friends are worried. Neighbors are staring. But I don't care. She set the book aside, her hands trembling slightly. You should care, Ryan. You're too young to be dragged into my mess. I leaned forward. It's not a mess. It's life, and I want to be part of it. With you. She shook her head, her voice breaking. You don't understand. David isn't just some bitter ex. He knows how to hurt people. He knows how to make them pay. If you stay close to me, you'll be his next target. I won't let that happen. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw fear win over her strength. She stood up and started pacing. Then she turned to me, her voice desperate. Go, Ryan. Please. For your own sake. I wanted to argue. I wanted to refuse. But the way she said it froze me in place. It wasn't rejection. It was sacrifice. She was pushing me away not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. I left her house without saying another word. The street looked the same as always. The same cracked sidewalk. The same buzzing streetlight. But everything felt broken. Jake found me later at a bar, staring at a drink I hadn't touched. She ended it? He asked. I nodded. The words stuck in my throat. For once, Jake didn't laugh. He put a hand on my shoulder. Then don't let her. If she matters to you, don't let her decide for both of you. I barely slept that night. Her voice kept playing over and over in my head. Go, Ryan. Please. But I could hear what she wasn't saying. She was scared. And fear was making her push away the one thing that made her feel alive again. 2 days later, I saw David's car parked outside her house. My chest tightened, but my feet moved before my brain could stop them. I walked across the street and pushed open her door without knocking. Inside, David was standing over Sarah, his voice sharp and cruel. You think this boy can protect you? You think he's a man? He'll leave the second he realizes what a burden you are. I stepped inside. You're wrong. Both of them turned. Sarah's eyes went wide. David's face twisted into a smirk. Look who finally found his courage. I took a deep breath, my fists clenched but my voice steady. I may not have your money or your years, but I know what I want, and I'm not walking away just because you say I should. David laughed, low and bitter. You don't understand, kid. She's mine. Always has been. Sarah's voice exploded. I'm not yours. Not anymore. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes burned with strength. You lost me the moment you chose control over love. For a long moment, David just stood there, anger flickering across his face. Then he muttered something I couldn't hear, turned, and slammed the door so hard the walls shook. Silence filled the room. Sarah collapsed into a chair, her head in her hands. I walked over and knelt beside her. You don't have to fight him alone anymore, I whispered. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Ryan, you don't understand what this will cost you. The gossip, the judgment, your future. I shook my head. None of that matters if I don't have this. If I don't have you. For the first time, she let the walls fall completely. She reached for my face, her touch trembling but certain. It's because of you, she whispered. The same words from that morning on the trail. Only now I understood. It's because of you I can breathe again. I can live again. I pulled her into my arms, and we just stayed there, holding on like the world outside didn't exist. The gossip wouldn't stop overnight. David wouldn't disappear. But none of that mattered anymore. Love isn't about choosing the easy path. It's about choosing each other even when everything around you tries to tear you apart. And I knew, without a single doubt, that I'd choose her again and again.